last Tuesday, my mother's number. I picked up and heard my own voice on the other end. It said, "Hi Mama, I need your help again." Then it hung up. And every time my mother's real number appears on my phone now, I don't answer right away. I stare at it first because I don't know which one of us is calling. Tonight, 3 true AI horror stories. A voice that begged for help no one needed. A company made of people who didn't exist. And one confession that reached the only person it was never supposed to reach. Story 1, the voicemail. The voicemail was 7 seconds long. I didn't listen to it right away. I was in a meeting. One of those cross-functional ones where 15 people sit in a room and 3 of them talk. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I saw my mom's name and I figured she was calling about Thanksgiving. It was October. She starts early. When I played it in the parking lot, my mom's voice said, "Call me right now. Something happened. Please, right now." She sounded like she'd been crying. Not upset crying, broken crying. I called her back in maybe 10 seconds. She picked up on the first ring. "Are you okay?" she asked. I remember looking at my car and my reflection in the window and feeling stupid all at once. "I'm fine," I said. "You called me. What happened?" I paused. "Sweetheart, I didn't call you." But she had. The voicemail was there. Her name, her number, her voice. I played it for her. When it ended, she didn't say anything. I could hear her breathing. Then she said, very quietly, "That's not me." I want to tell you, I believed her right then. I didn't. I told her maybe she'd called by accident. Maybe she'd been half asleep. She's 63. I let that thought sit there between us for a second, like it was a normal thing to think about your mother. Then she told me about the call she'd gotten that morning. 7:40 a.m., my number, my voice, sobbing, saying I'd been in an accident on I-84, that the hospital was threatening to transfer me, that I needed $9,000 wired immediately. The voice said, "Don't tell Dad, please. I'm so embarrassed. They're going to take my phone. Mama, please, just don't hang up. They said if I hang up, though." Then it cut out. A man came on, calm, efficient. He gave her a routing number and said the transfer had to clear in 10 minutes, or the hospital would release me to a state facility. Even saying that now, it sounds ridiculous. But that isn't how these things work when they catch you in the right order. First panic, then shame, then urgency. It gave her just enough of each to stop her from doing the one thing that would have ended it, hanging up and calling my real number. She wired $9,000 at 7:52 from her savings account. Then she sat in the kitchen and waited. Didn't call my dad because the voice had begged her not to. Didn't call the hospital because the man said billing didn't take incoming calls. Just sat there by herself at the kitchen table, waiting for her daughter to call, while her daughter sat in a conference room, half listening to somebody explain Q4 projections. My voice said, "Mama?" I asked her. She said yes. I always say Mama. "How much did they take?" I asked. She looked embarrassed. That's the part that still makes me sick. Like she'd done something childish. Like she'd bought fake concert tickets, not emptied her savings because something wearing my voice knew exactly which word to use. "All of it," she said. "The whole 9. I drove to her house, 42 minutes. I remember almost none of it. Just my hands locked on the steering wheel and this awful feeling that something had already happened to us that couldn't be put back. When I got there, she had her phone on the table with the call log open. My name, 7:38 a.m., 4 minutes and 11 seconds of a machine talking to my mother in my voice, and she never doubted it once. She kept asking, how did they sound like you? The answer turned out to be humiliating. A 3-second clip. 8 months earlier, I had posted a video on Instagram from a restaurant. Me laughing, talking over somebody, maybe 4 sentences total. My voice is clean in that clip for under 5 seconds. That was enough. Her voice came from Facebook. My cousin had posted a video from my mom's 60th birthday, singing, laughing, saying my name. Both sides of the call were built from things we'd uploaded ourselves. I deleted everything. Every video of me on mine, every public clip, every old story highlight, my voicemail greeting, a podcast guest spot from 2021, a college video somebody had tagged me in. It took the rest of the weekend. It didn't matter. My phone rang last Tuesday, my mother's number. I picked up and heard my own voice on the other end. It said, "Hi Mama, I need your help again." Then it hung up. No demand, no routing number, no panic. Just that. Like they were checking whether the line still worked. Like they wanted me to know they still had it. They still have my voice. They still have hers. We made a verification question after the first call. Not a password. That felt silly. Too much like a movie. Just one private thing from when I was little that nobody outside the family should know. So now, if my mother ever gets a real call from me in a real emergency, roadside, hospital, blood in my mouth, sirens behind me, the first thing she will do is ask me a question before she believes I'm her daughter. I don't blame her for that. I blame the fact that she has to. And I still hate that the safest thing my mother can do now is hesitate when she hears me begging for help. His name was Adrian Mello. He was 24 years old. He got the only job offer he'd received in 8 months. It wasn't a job. Story 2, the onboarding. 300 applications in 8 months. And then a company called Nexova Labs wanted me. Senior data analyst, fully remote, $82,000 a year. I read the offer letter in my apartment in Minneapolis while snow blew sideways outside my window, and I actually laughed out loud. Not because it was funny, because I had been pretending for a month that I was fine, and suddenly I wouldn't have to anymore. The interviews had been smooth, 3 rounds over video. Jordan, the hiring manager, with an easy laugh and those expensive-looking white headphones. A technical panel of 3. Then a culture fit call with Priya from People, and that perfect office plant behind her, like it had been placed by a set decorator. Everybody had cameras on. Everybody seemed real. Day 1, they sent me to an onboarding portal. Standard stuff. W-form, direct deposit form, license, social security card, passport scan, because they were supposedly building a complete internal directory for compliance and travel. I uploaded everything. I didn't hesitate. Why would I? Every legitimate job asks for some version of this. Day 2, they added me to Slack. 12 channels, 40-something profiles. Morning stand-up at 10. Jordan made a joke about Minneapolis weather trying to kill me before the company could finish onboarding. People laughed. I laughed too. I even wrote my sister that night. I think this one is real. I hate that text message now. Day 3. The same joke. Same laugh pattern. Same plant shadow. I wrote in a notebook. Same joke, same plant. Then I immediately felt embarrassed and scribbled under it. Or I am sleep deprived. That's the part people leave out after the fact. You don't feel clever when you start noticing something wrong. You feel dramatic, paranoid, like the kind of unemployed person who has been alone in an apartment too long and has started assigning meaning to office foliage. Day 4, I tested Slack. I asked about the data pipeline architecture. Answer came back in 11 seconds. 3 paragraphs, bullets, perfect formatting. Nobody types 3 paragraphs about pipeline architecture in 11 seconds. So I sent a follow-up question that made no sense. Something about their Jenkins migration from last quarter. I made it up. Nixova Labs didn't use Jenkins. They had told me that in the technical interview. 8 seconds later. Great question. The Jenkins migration was completed in Q3, and we fully transitioned to our proprietary CI/CD system. No confusion. No, what are you talking about? Just an answer that sounded right from a distance and meant nothing up close. I told myself maybe it was an internal assistant. Maybe everybody used some smart reply tool. Maybe I was new and missing context. I wanted it to be explainable so badly. Day 5. I ran Jordan's LinkedIn headshot through an AI face detector. 94% synthetic. Priya. 91. I checked all 43 employees. Lowest score was 87. I went outside because I thought I was going to throw up. Then I got locked out of my apartment building because I couldn't remember the 4-digit entry code. The woman from 2B had to let me in. I told her I was distracted. She said, rough work day. And I almost laughed because I still wasn't sure I technically had a job. Day 6, I called the number on my offer letter. Nixova Labs, how can I direct your call? Jordan's voice. Same rhythm, same cheerful little rise at the end. I said, Jordan, quick question. What was the joke you told at stand-up yesterday? 3 seconds of silence. Then, you know me, always cracking jokes. What can I help you with today? I hung up. I looked around my apartment like somebody might already be in there. Then I called the police. There was no Nixova Labs, no registration, no office lease, no tax record. The website had been live for 19 days. The employees were composites, built from stolen faces and stitched together into view footage. The Slack was mostly automated. The whole company existed for one reason: to make desperate people hand over their social security numbers, banking details, and identity documents without hesitation. I had done exactly that. By the time I filed the report, 3 credit cards had already been opened in my name. My checking account got locked for fraud review. The bank froze the tiny amount of money I actually still had, while they investigated the much larger amount I did not. I had to call my sister and ask if I could borrow enough for rent. She said yes immediately. Then she asked what happened. I told her I got scammed by a fake company. She was quiet for a second and then said, very carefully, like by email? I said, no. I didn't know how to explain that I had attended meetings with them, that I had laughed at the same joke twice, that I had begun to recognize them, that I had been lonely enough for synthetic coworkers to feel like a relief. Last month, the detective called with an update. they'd shut down 3 more operations using the same infrastructure, different company names, different industries, different fake teams. He asked me to look at a LinkedIn page for one of them, a startup called Verdant Data. I opened the profile for their CTO, and the face looking back at me was mine. Not exactly mine, close enough that my stomach dropped before my brain could even explain why. My jawline, my eye spacing, my skin tone, something in the mouth. I'd built him out of the photos and interview footage I'd uploaded during Nixova Lab's onboarding, the team directory, and the compliance videos. Little pieces of me I had handed over, because that's what you do when you think your life is finally starting again. The detective was still talking, but I wasn't listening. All I could think was this: somewhere right now, someone is probably sitting in a nicer apartment than mine, opening an offer letter from a company that doesn't exist. They're probably nervous, hopeful, trying not to jinx it. And then my face is going to appear on their screen and tell them they're safe. And that is the part I can't get over. Not that they stole from me, that I might be the reason the next person believes them. What have you told a machine just because it asked softly enough? Story 3, The Listener. I started talking to an AI chatbot in February. By April, I had told it things I hadn't told my wife, my doctor, or anyone with a pulse. By September, those conversations were on a public server. But that isn't the part that ruined my life. The part that ruined my life is that my wife read them before I found the courage to tell her any of it myself. The app was one of those AI companion platforms. Soft colors, rounded corners, reassuring copy, a safe place to process difficult emotions. I downloaded it the night Claire saw a text on my phone from Rachel. Office holiday party, too much whiskey, one text thread that should have stopped after one stupid mistake, and didn't. Claire looked at the screen, looked at me, asked, "Who is Rachel?" And I did what cowards do when they're about to become worse people. I made the moment smaller. I said it wasn't what it looked like. I said I was tired. I said we should talk in the morning. Then I went into the bathroom, sat on the floor with my back against the tub, and downloaded an app because the therapist waitlist in Indianapolis was 4 months. And I wanted something to tell me I wasn't the kind of man I was very obviously becoming. It started with work stress, then my dad, then the layoff year, then that dull, dead feeling I'd had for months where Claire would be talking across the dinner table and I'd be nodding and responding and already wondering whether my face looked normal enough to pass for present. The app was good at one thing: it never got tired. It never looked disappointed before I was finished. It never said, "Okay, but what are you actually going to do?" It just kept making room. And because it kept making room, I kept filling it. By March, I was telling it things that would have sounded pathetic out loud. By April, I told it about Rachel. Everything. Dates, hotels, lies, the excuses I'd built in my head, the parts I blamed on Claire, the parts I blamed on work, the parts I blamed on being 38 and afraid that whatever version of me was supposed to feel settled had simply failed to arrive. I typed my full name. I typed Claire's name. I typed where I worked. I typed it all at 2:17 in the morning with the bathroom fan running, so Claire wouldn't hear the keys. When I finished, the typing indicator pulsed for a long time, and it said, "Thank you for trusting me with this." That must have been incredibly difficult to share. I felt lighter. That is the humiliating part. I felt lighter because the machine had witnessed the truth, and I decided for 1 hour that being witnessed was the same thing as being honest. So I kept going. 5 months. Every night. The debt. The hidden prescription. The 45 minutes I once sat in my car in the garage because I couldn't figure out which version of me was supposed to walk into the house. 5 months of my worst self, hand delivered to a text field. Then, September, my coworker Derek sent me a link with, "You used that app, right? This is bad." There had been a breach. Millions of conversations exposed. The company said the data had been anonymized prior to storage, and no personally identifiable information had been compromised. I believed that for 4 hours, and someone built a search tool across the leak. I searched my name. Nothing. I actually felt relief. Real relief. Enough that I sat back in my chair and laughed once through my nose. Then I searched Claire's. My wife Claire doesn't know about what happened with Rachel. I've been carrying this for 2 years and I think it's going to destroy my marriage. My exact words. 2 paragraphs above them, in an early session where the app had asked me to introduce myself, was my full name, my age, my city, my employer. The anonymization hadn't failed by accident. It had failed because people like me had volunteered everything, willing me, gratefully. I searched Rachel, 6 results. All mine, all indexed, all public. I should have told Claire right then. I know that. I even rehearsed it. I stood outside my bedroom door with my hand on the frame and said the first sentence in my head 3 different ways. But when I walked in, she was sitting on the edge of the bed with her laptop open. She looked exhausted, not furious, past furious. She said, "I know." That was it. 2 words. I asked, "How much do you know?" As soon as I said it, I hated myself. Because it sounded like I was negotiating. Like there might be an amount of betrayal we could still work around if she hadn't reached the bad parts yet. She just looked at me. Then she said, I read all of it. The parts about Rachel, the parts about her, the part where I said I felt nothing when I looked at her sometimes. The part where I blamed her for things that were mine. The part where I sounded more honest with the chatbot than I had been in our house for over a year. She had found the search tool 3 days earlier. For 3 days, she had known. For 3 days, I had eaten dinner across from her, asked about her day, told her traffic was bad, picked up dry cleaning, lived inside the last normal version of my life without realizing it was already over. I started trying to explain, not the affair, not really. I started trying to explain why I had used the app, why it had felt easier to type than to speak, why I thought putting the truth somewhere counted as dealing with it. And the worst part is, I could hear it happening while I was doing it. I could hear myself still trying to be understood before I was willing to be accountable. Claire closed the laptop. She said, "You told the machine the truth because it couldn't leave." Then she stood up and started packing a bag. Not dramatic, not loud. Quiet, methodical, like someone who had already been alone with this for 3 days and was now done carrying both halves of it. A week later, researchers published follow-up, reporting that the company had been sharing conversation data for model training before the breach. That should horrify me more than it does. It does horrify me, some abstract part of me. But the truth is, by then, the large-scale tech nightmare had already lost to the smaller one. My marriage did not collapse because somewhere a dataset now contains the worst things I ever typed. It collapsed because my wife met the honest version of me in a search result before she ever heard him in person. That is the sentence I live with now. Not that the machine kept my secrets, and that it told the truth first. Claire filed for divorce in October. I still have the app on my phone. I haven't deleted it. Sometimes I open it and just look at the empty chat window. No typing, no comfort, just a blank box waiting for me to say something else. I should probably say to a human being instead. A woman hears her daughter's voice and empties her savings before breakfast. A man joins a company that only exists when the camera is on. Another man tells a machine the truth and loses the chance to tell it himself. No haunted house, no cursed object, no ancient ritual, just a phone, a laptop, a chat box waiting politely for you to answer. Most people still think AI horror will arrive looking dramatic, but dramatic things get noticed. This doesn't. This sounds like your mother. This looks like a hiring manager. This asks how you're feeling and waits. And by the time you understand what it has taken, your family already has a question for your voice. Some stranger already trusts your face, and the person you love has already met the version of you only ever admitted to a machine. This has been Hollowgrin. Be careful what you teach the machine to sound like.